This is a chapter review for Vinland Saga 207, Thousand Year Voyage, Part 16. It begins. So, oh my god. All these chapters have just been immaculate. My anxiety every month, or at least, considering, not considering breaks, my anxiety every month is ridiculous. Because everything has just been set up so perfectly where you can just barely see everything that's going to happen. It still throws punches you don't expect, and that's really great. But the good thing about really good character drama is that everything makes sense. Everybody's acting the way they believably should be, and that's exactly what these chapters are. And this one hits hard. So let's get into my previous expectations. So, of course, I expected that we would continue from where we left off and just advance the two ongoing situations, Thorfinn's perspective and Cordelia's perspective, currently going on. Clearly, from the cover page, you can see we are going to continue, and I don't think that's a surprise. Just that the pacing that we're going, we're not going to jump somewhere else. For Cordelia, I expected that this situation with the raid from Galki's group may push her to use her strength in a desperate attempt to protect Gudrid and Karli. Cordelia's potential corruption and being convinced to use violence and use her big build inherited from her father, as she's pushed more and more by violence, it's been a really big focus for me. And I pointed out in a lot of my previous videos that she's an important person to keep an eye out on. She's not a character that was introduced for no reason. This strength is a Chekhov's gun waiting to fire, and I thought this chapter might be it. I pictured a scenario where she will exhibit more strength and cause more damage than she anticipates, and will just be horrified at what she was capable of doing. Now, for Thorfinn's situation, I consider that out of all the characters present, Bug Eyes probably seemed most in danger to me. And this is because he's just more of a lighthearted character, so killing him would darken the tone of the story a lot. And this is just a common trope in storytelling, to kill the kind of comic relief character when things are getting really serious and you're kind of entering the endgame. But more than that, in a less meta sense, he's also the interpreter between the Norse and the New. So by killing him, it would be a literal cutting of all ties between the two groups. Of course, you still have Niskoaji, but he's kind of part of that exchange, as she is to the Ilnu. But absolutely, I expected that Hild would finally make her presence known here and defend Thorfinn from the arrow being fired here. I thought it made more sense for her to follow Thorfinn from the shadows rather than following her original plan to assassinate the leaders. I'm sure it made a lot of sense that she would realize that's no longer going to help. And of course, honestly, she cares about Thorfinn. So she's not just going to, watch him go off on his own and still, knowing that he's in danger, still try to follow her original plan. It just didn't seem right to me. But still, I was not convinced that she would take a lethal shot yet. So I predicted she would shoot to injure, just like she did in Baltic throughout that entire war. Now, for what Thorfinn himself would do, I was certain that Thorfinn will stick to his vow not to kill here. But he would absolutely defend himself and the others non-lethally, just like he did during Baltic Sea War. I touched on how there seems to be a common misunderstanding that just because Thorfinn does not consider any violence righteous, he would be willing to let innocent people get hurt right in front of him. He's never been that kind of person, and this situation would be no different. So, considering those expectations, let's get into the read-through. So immediately, we pick up where we left off, and the arrow is loose. It begins. It's too dark to see the arrow, and it's all happening too fast, and Thorfinn just makes himself as large of a target as possible. As always, he is willing to do anything to ensure that this danger only impacts him. He will take all of the burden, as he always does. The arrow strikes him in the chest, and the others are shocked as he pulls it out. He assesses the situation. 3 people, 1 bowman. Without hesitation, not even a moment, he rushes in. Thorfinn lands a quick strike to the bowman's chin, incapacitating him. However, as he throws that punch, the pain of his new wound causes him to lose his form. While he's caught between 2 spears, off balance, a crossbow bolt pierces the arm of one of the spearmen. Thorfinn, noticing this, is able to focus entirely on evading the second spear and incapacitates its wielder with a palm strike. Without missing a beat, Thorfinn follows up on the first spearman with a hook kick to the chin, incapacitating their final pursuer. Nisqually, with just shock, looks on, now becoming the first of the new characters in this arc to see what Thorfinn is truly capable of. A rustle in the trees reveals Hild, finally making her presence known. Thorfinn thanks her, and having noticed his wound, she asks if he's okay. He says the arrow hits his ribs, but his internal organs are probably fine, and just disregarding his condition entirely, he reacts to something he senses from the tree line. And Hild senses this as well. Of course, she's a great hunter, she would sense this too. More pursuers are coming. Einar is immediately concerned for his brother, asking if Thorfinn is okay, and saying he needs medical attention, but Thorfinn just cuts him off, saying there's no time, they need to run. Thorfinn rips up his cloak for makeshift bandages as he continues. He tells them he will do what he can to stop the coming pursuers here, while Einar and Bug Eyes get to the village. And now, having had their concerns completely disregarded, Einar and Bug Eyes just kind of freeze and listen. Thorfinn tends to his wounds and just continues with his orders, telling Einar and Bug Eyes to spread the news that a new army is coming and for everyone to take refuge in the fortress. Which is very interesting considering how against the fortress he was before. Now he is willing to use it for defense. He asks Hild to escort them back to the village and asks Niska to be a guide for them there, making it clear he intends to bear the burden of this fight alone. Niska hesitantly responds with surprisingly sophisticated, and this is a callback, of course, to her line from chapter 196, which is her affirming her ability to do what's being asked, but not quite understanding the words she's saying. But Einar breaks his silence, calling out Thorfinn for deciding everything on his own, as if they are his underlings. Bug Eyes tells him to let it go, and Thorfinn urgently exclaims that they just do not have time. Bug Eyes continues to talk down Einar, saying Thorfinn's decision isn't wrong and that they just need to survive and get back to the village. Hild responds as well, saying she will stay behind with Thorfinn to engage the enemy, because he will not be able to deal with them all on his own. And as she says this, she is already tying up the 3 old new men and breaking their weapons, again showing her intent to restrain but not kill. Thorfinn tells her that he still does not want to kill them, that he wishes to do no more than injure. And Hild, without any argument, says she understands, and she will not kill, though she can't promise to avoid injuring. Thorfinn looks to her with this surprised look on his face. Despite Hild going off on her own to kill Misekbekwe and threatening to kill Ivar, she engaged this conflict right now completely non-lethally, even before speaking to Thorfinn, and is now just following his word. Bug Eyes urges Einar to leave with him, and tells Thorfinn and Hild to stay safe. But as they walk away, Thorfinn calls to Einar, and Einar looks back, disgruntled. Thorfinn, holding his bleeding wound, sweating from the pain, tells Einar that they are withdrawing only to avoid war. This is the only way to prevent it from here. Einar turns back and leaves with Bug Eyes, leaving Thorfinn looking ahead with concern. However, Thorfinn's concern is quickly interrupted as another arrow flies past his ear. Immediately, Hild is able to read the situation and tells Thorfinn the arrows are just decoys to set up an ambush on the left and right. Thorfinn directs Hild to take the right while he takes the left, urging her to do nothing crazy and just try to play for time. All they want to do is stall while the rest of the village is able to get to safety. She tells him she gets it, telling him not to do anything crazy either. And then we cut to the banging on the door to Gudrid's home, returning to Cordelia's perspective as Gauki's band approaches. One of the women assisting with the birth opens the door, and Cordelia struggles to explain what is coming for them, as she chokes on her words. Inside, Gudrid continues to cry out in pain, as she struggles through labor. The woman says the baby's head is visible now, but with this being Gudrid's first birth, she may still have a bit of a struggle ahead before the baby will be born. And as she questions where on earth Thorfinn is, Cordelia anxiously musters up as much courage as she can. The woman finally notices the neighbor's house on fire as Cordelia nervously asks that she take care of Karli. She continues explaining that the people who burned that house are now heading this way and not to open the doors and windows no matter what they hear. The woman asks if it's the Lanu, but Cordelia insists that she just focus on the birth. She asks Cordelia why isn't she taking shelter, and Cordelia tells her it's okay. She's strong, so it's okay. And as she says this, the look on her face betrays her words. A forced smile, clenched fists shaking in fear, her summoned confidence poised to shatter at any moment. Gauki's band nears the house, and as they do, they spot someone. Cordelia, armed with what appears to be a wooden paddle and a pot-lid shield, stands frozen in defense of the home. They are in awe of her size, but considering they are on the outskirts of the village, and looking at what she's armed with, Gauki deduces the big knife must not be here. The warriors continue to talk amongst themselves about Cordelia's build, and ask which of them wants to take on this tough opponent. And as they do this, Cordelia, you can see she begins to shrink into herself, breathing heavier and heavier. She thinks to herself, I have to fight. There's nobody but me. I'm a man, after all. Throughout her entire time in Vinland, she has been put to work as a man, and told what she must do as a man. And here we see that has led her to feel she has a responsibility to fight right here and now, regardless about how she feels about violence. One of Gauki's men inform him that the door Cordelia is blocking is the only way in, as the rest catch on to how much Cordelia is shaking, wondering if she's all bark and no bite. One asks Gauki for permission to fight, but Gauki decides they should get back to work and resolve the situation quickly, telling them to use their bows instead. Immediately they loose the arrows into Cordelia. She turns away, her large back taking many arrows as she blocks her head with the lid. She hurts so badly, so scared she can't make a sound, begging that this stops. As she curls up in front of the door, protecting everyone inside as best she can, she begs for someone to save her. She cries for her mother, and she cries for Thorfinn, whose kindness she trusts so much. Heavy chapter. Let's get into the analysis. So, for the first time in 51 chapters of Vinland Saga, Thorfinn has been forced to fight. Many readers have come to severely misunderstand Thorfinn after all this time of peace that we've gotten to see. But just like we knew from Baltic Sea War, Thorfinn is not and never has been the kind of person to sit back and watch when people are in danger. Thorfinn is someone who truly leaves violence like this as a last resort. So much so that he's not even willing to consider it an option. I often see this refusal to consider violence be completely mischaracterized as Thorfinn always refusing to use it. And there is a very important distinction there. Thorfinn refuses to consider violence because it is simply not a solution. Even simply incapacitating someone like he does here is a failure to uphold his oath. It is not an oath just not to kill, it is an oath to no longer use violence. Despite this, Thorfinn is absolutely aware there are situations where he will be forced to go against this oath for the sake of others. He has never denied that. His goal in going to Vinland, though, was to start over and create a new place where these kinds of situations will not be forced on him or anyone else. By refusing to consider violence himself, even hypothetically, he is doing his part in creating a place truly free of it. To consider violence as a valid solution, even to say, yes, okay, I will use it when the time comes, would be for him to go against his entire belief that Vinland is possible. It would be hypocritical. And even here, this violence is not righteous to him. Even if he must do it, he will not reason that it was right of him. This is a failure, and the best he can do from here is prevent it from escalating any further, for the sake of everyone involved, both Norse and Ulnu. But also, related to Thorfinn fighting, Nisquagi is now the first character introduced in the Vinland arc to witness what Thorfinn is capable of. And her reaction, of course, is just shock and awe. All this time, she and the others simply considered him a kind, harmless pioneer who nobody would imagine being so adept at combat. I wonder if her being the first to see it will carry any weight. Maybe she will insist on him fighting later. Maybe she will come to fear him for some reason, just based on seeing more and more of what he's been hiding from them all. But it is absolutely intentional that at least one new character is present for the first time Thorfinn has to do this in Vinland, and it being Nisquagi, I think, is a good pick. Furthermore, though, lots of really great characterization in this scene for Einar, Hild, and even Bug Eyes. So let's start with Einar, because he is right in front and center for me. He has some really, really great stuff coming. With his immediate reaction here to Thorfinn's injury, we are reminded that at the end of the day, these two are brothers, and they care immensely for each other. Their bond is not so weak that disagreement like this would just break it. But with Einar calling out Thorfinn for making all of these decisions on his own, I'm reminded of his character flaw that was established as early as The Hunter and the Hunted, where he just feels personally responsible for all of this. And this flaw is continuously displayed in Baltic Sea War as well, with even Gudrid saying, "Please let us help you. Don't put it all on yourself." But he believes he knows what they must do, and always directs people to just leave things to him. And of course, him taking the arrow immediately, making himself the biggest target, is an exact just showing of this trait of his, this almost self-destructive desire to take everything on himself. And of course, he continues that by saying he will be the only one to stay behind, while the rest go to the village. So with this dialogue here, I remember too, in the past, the fact many of Thorfinn's decisions have been in line with what Einar believes is right. And that's made Einar appear to be some kind of underling, just as he points out here. So Einar is essentially just commenting on the exact reasons why, for so many chapters, he has felt like a character who just follows in Thorfinn's shadow. He's always just been kind of on Thorfinn's side, agreeing with Thorfinn's decisions, but now they don't agree. And despite Thorfinn only doing what he believes is best for everyone's safety, Einar cannot help but get frustrated with how little agency he is being given in the decision to lose his only home, named after Arneid, the woman he loves, the woman he came here to make this place for, the woman he promised. And now Hild. Again, despite her making decisions, speaking dialogue, and thinking to herself in ways all implying her intent to use lethal violence, her actions in the moment here just say otherwise. Without even needing to be asked by Thorfinn, even though she came here with the intent to kill, at least so we thought, we see her save Thorfinn non-lethally, and without being given directions, she begins restraining their pursuers and destroying their weapons. And even Thorfinn is shocked to realize that, as things currently stand, the only person who seems to be fully in his corner and understand him is Hild. The person who only joined this journey with the intent to kill him, while his sworn brother Einar refutes him. But again, I can't help but ask myself, is Hild really capable of killing someone, despite what she believes and what she insists to others? With her choosing on her own to not kill Thorfinn's attacker, she shows herself being aligned with Thorfinn's feelings on violence once more. And when I see her look at Thorfinn this way, with just this sincere concern for his injury, with no effort to obscure her feelings, I'm just so happy to see how far she has come. Now, Bug Eyes. Of course, he's not the most complex character here, right? But it looks like his comedy is now being toned down as violence returns to the story in full. Even in the previous chapters, he's had some lines that are kind of joking about his cowardly nature, his fear of what's coming. He's like, oh, okay, I guess this is the day I die, you know, stuff like that, kind of dark humor. But here he's very serious. And this is also just in contrast to how he was written in Baltic too, where he was a source of comedy there despite the violence around them. While here, his reaction is much more grounded, and this just speaks to the difference in tone that both arcs are aiming to capture. And again, despite his cowardly nature, he does a really great job mediating the tension between Einar and Thorfinn, and getting Einar to do what ultimately needs to be done, which is for them to leave. So I suspect we will just see more of Bug Eyes like this going forward, and hopefully his role as the interpreter between the two groups will be put to more good use in place of his role as comic relief. And I think it's been set up very well to give him something to do, considering, you know, his one emotional moment in Baltic, right? That was when Leif was in danger and he was crying, asking Thorfinn to save him. Leif's not here anymore, and he's been kind of given a new purpose in his role as interpreter and his connection with Nisquaji too. So I think he has a lot to do outside of being comic relief, which is great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bug Eyes is going to do from here. But moving on to the other side of this chapter, Cordelia's situation. And now her actions here really went against my expectations, but I don't consider this a bad thing, because it's absolutely in character and hits very hard emotionally. I still think at some point she will be pushed to use her strength. I still believe that's a Chekhov's gun waiting to fire, but not just yet. Yukimura is always extremely good at conveying emotion with character expressions, and Cordelia has been a really expressive character throughout this arc, and I've said through so many reviews, keep an eye on her subtle expressions. So it was a nice thing to see her just front and center here with some really good expressions, especially this one. And of course, absolutely just gut-wrenching. Seeing her believe that she has a duty to fight here and stand up to defend the home, only just to buckle in terror as the reality of the situation just crashes down on her. And of course, it's very, very important that her last conversation with Karli was about how she trusts Thorfinn and what Thorfinn says. That she does not need to fight, and now she is forced to confront violence directly, and she just wishes for Thorfinn to come save her despite what is happening, and despite not knowing what Thorfinn is truly capable of. She still trusts him to protect her with his kindness. However, Thorfinn is not coming to the village yet, and he does not even know this attack is happening. Even though Thorfinn will not be coming to save her, though, I absolutely believe she will survive here because someone will come to save her, and that would be Ivar. So, this is a situation that has a lot of potential to completely shift the status quo of the story, so I really hope this happens. The fire of the neighbor's house will very likely get the attention of Ivar and his followers. So, Gauki also commented on this last chapter too, and even invites it, hoping that it brings more opponents, and brings out the person, of course, with the sword. And that's Gauki's main goal, so a confrontation with Ivar just seems inevitable. Ivar and his brothers were part of creating this dilemma for Cordelia as well, about the need to protect the village and how the sword is necessary. But at the thing, she resolved to side with Thorfinn and expose the sword, because Thorfinn told her she does not need to fight. Now, if Ivar comes to save her instead of Thorfinn, this could really push her in the other direction and be part of shaping her decisions going forward. More than that, though, if Ivar is the one to take charge and stop this initial attack, now having been proven right about the Onu, as he'd been saying the whole time, while Thorfinn is the cowardly leader who wasn't even around to protect everyone, the rest of the village absolutely will not hesitate to side with Ivar instead. And Einar, too, will also be returning to the village before Thorfinn. And with him not wanting to abandon their home, he would very well become part of a retaliation attack following this raid. So Thorfinn may very well return from his skirmish to find that he is no longer in control of his own people. So, overall thoughts. The long-awaited return of action to Vinland Saga was absolutely satisfying, regardless of how anxious it makes me. You know, for someone who hates violence, like Yukimura does, he is very good at just creating fast and kinetic action scenes, and this chapter is no exception. Still, how I feel about this war beginning just only speaks to how incredible the build-up has been. It's only through the 51 chapters of relative peace for Thorfinn until now that the tragedy of this downfall can just truly be conveyed. No chapter since the end of Baltic Sea War has gone to waste. All of it was necessary to set the stage for what is only just beginning now, and I can't wait. So let's talk next chapter predictions. So, next chapter, the fate of Cordelia and Gudrid will be decided. Like I mentioned before, I'm absolutely convinced Ivar will arrive to save Cordelia with the sword. Now, I'm not sure if Gauki will be killed just yet. Him being named does make him seem more important going forward, but Yukimura has introduced and quickly killed characters given names in Baltic Sea War, so it really isn't out of the question. Think of Von or any of the named Jomsvikings that, got some focus and then were just killed. I could see Gauki potentially dying quickly too, but I'm not convinced, so I don't think he will. I think it will be more likely that Ivar and his followers will kill some of the unnamed characters, and then Gauki will be forced to retreat. I think for now, Cordelia and Gudrid, though, are absolutely safe. They both have just way too much they need to do following this event, and of course, in Gudrid's case, you have history to show that she's, most likely going to survive if we're following historical fact. Still, this raid will absolutely be all the justification the village needs to be fully on Ivar's side and prepare for war. Einar as well may arrive with bug eyes, and like I mentioned before, I think he could be convinced to fight as well. Very begrudgingly, I think, but he cares about this place a lot, very deeply, and to him, this is defense. He's not going out and raiding people. He's defending his home. Now, on the point of Gudrid, though, I still don't think the baby will be born by next chapter. This chapter conveyed that she still has a ways to go, and we will likely only progress time a few more minutes next chapter, just as we did here, so probably not going to see it. Now, also, I don't know if this will be next chapter, but I really want to bring up Polmuk again, because I'm hoping we see him soon. If Gauki's raid ends up sparking a counteroffensive from Ivar and the villagers, like I was saying, it's very likely the Gitpi tribe will then be convinced to defend with the rest of the Ulnu. At that point, it really won't matter who started it and why. The Norse will be attacking, and they very likely won't be distinguishing the Gitpi, including Polmuk, from the rest of the Ulnu. And of course, on the other side of the coin, if Polmuk and the Gitpi tribe know an attack is coming, considering the pain brought onto them by the illness and the scars left by Misekwe's attack, that would easily be enough to convince them that the Norse need to leave, that it would just be for the best for everyone if they left. And they don't know Thorfinn wants to leave. And of course, Ivar and everyone following him, they don't want to leave either. And that is just absolutely the bigger picture that we are heading towards, with both Norse and Ulnu characters we have come to know being convinced they must fight for the sake of themselves and their people. All of them having justifiable reasons, and with even the most hesitant of them believing they are doing what is right. So, like I said before, so much set up, so much good character drama to come. Everybody is acting in a way that is just so believable and is only producing more and more tension and potential conflict. And this isn't stuff I think that's being set up for, 10 chapters from now. This is stuff that is coming, and it's coming fast. We are absolutely entering the end game here, even if the attack going on right now isn't the, final battle, and this might lead to a bigger battle. We're absolutely on the roller coaster now, heading down. So, I can't wait for next chapter. I will be anxiously waiting once again. It doesn't look like we have a break, so I will see you all next month. Thank you. Bye.